Okay, we're ready? Okay, well, we're gonna call this to order. 2025, GPC procurement selection shortlist, first meeting. Guess we'll do it once around the table.
Yeah, and should we have anyone listening introduce themselves if they want to?
I'm not sure if, do we have anybody on?
Yep, there's,
You can just read them out, Grace.
oh, okay,
Just read them out, they don't really need to introduce.
Yeah, we don't know who they're with.
okay. Arpita,
Okay,
this is why I don't like reading that one. Gabrielle Grimaldi, Jenny Arezzi, Kathleen Keen, Lisa Azunza, and Wally. Gonna do a better job.
if everybody that's online, if they can put what organization or what firm they represent, that would be great, or if they're from the public, that would be great. You can do it once around the table. Dave, you wanna start?
Sure. Dave Hutchinson, Executive Director, Sarasota Manatee MPO, and I would like to welcome our evaluation team and thank especially Paula and Bart for helping us, and we'll jump into it.
Okay. Paula Wiggins, Sarasota County Interim Senior Transportation Manager.
Nina Venter, Senior Planner with the MPO.
Clark Davis, Deputy Director of Manatee County Public Works.
Ryan Brown, Deputy Director and Planning Manager of the NPO.
David Machado, Fiscal Manager of the MPO. I also want to make it known that two additional,
I wasn't sure if it was supposed to sit here or not.
that's fine, members that are sitting there are part of the MPO staff, but are not part of this evaluation committee. Just want to make it, known on the record.
And then the scoring sheet.
Scoring sheet, yeah, we're gonna do that after we,
Do some discussion.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, because I think that having that in front of us might be helpful while we're having our discussion.
you wanna know?
And then just one other, my only question for now would be, did everyone meet the state's requirements?
Yes,
Okay, very good. Thanks for confirming. And everybody met our
yes, I should.
page numbers and size of font type
Yes.
stuff as
Around
well.
that too.
I should have divided it in half, but divide and conquer, I guess. Oh, yeah. Two under one. There's one more just.
Thank you.
There shouldn't be any real surprises on this. This is just similar to last time around you both were here, so.
So no public comments, right?
No.
Okay. Any discussions? Oh, I didn't even see you left. Oh, okay. One thing that changed from last times, for those that were here, in the bottom, I added the lines for your name, the department, organization that you represent at today's date. Just so when we put them as part of the records, it's there who voted for what.
Are we filling this out right now?
Just the bottom
Just the
part,
bottom, and then we'll talk,
Just-
if there's anything you'll talk about, wait for Dave, and then.
since we're waiting for Dave, I figured I would get that part out of them.
I can't see that clearly, it's not existent.
Dave, I was mentioning that one difference from prior years is that I put in the bottom.
All right.
For your name, the organization, and the date. So you can fill that out if you want.
Oh, I have a pen. I just wanted a pencil. Well, I guess the other thing that I could say is, as we've experienced in years past, we have great consultants in Florida, so it makes these types of selection processes challenging and difficult because we have so many good teams to choose from. So we express thanks to everybody who submitted as well.
Mention it when we're looking for this.
Yeah, so we're looking today to shortlist to 6, we're gonna do 6. And then those 6 that get shortlisted will be called for March 17th for the oral presentations.
Keep that in mind, how we score and how we rate. Didn't want to make it any longer than that. I think 6 presentations is plenty to see.
How long
It's 6
is it?
too many. If you've got 3 or 4 you already like, we can skip it.
How long are you anticipating those presentations, like?
Well, I mean, we'll have to work within the 2-hour time limit of the meeting.
Of the whole meeting,
Um,
so that's like Did we do 20 minutes and then?
I was gonna say anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. I mean, that's why we're here. We can set the ground rules now. I propose 6. It doesn't have to be 6.
Can be less than that.
As part of the discussion, what do we wanna do?
If we can narrow it to 6, I'm happy with that today.
Okay, how many do you ultimately think you will select?
More, I would say more than we have now between.
4 or 5. We have 3 now.
3 now.
Okay,
And there, depending on our discussion today, there may be one team that has, a specialty area that we think we might be using based on our unified planning work program and the studies that we see projected. We used that in last time around, and that may be useful this time around as well.
okay, so,
We may end up where we have to hear from 7.
right, or you're not bound to do presentations and interviews, so if after all
Could
this
do it
40,
today.
you've
That's
got
correct.
5 that are clearly above all the others that
Sure.
we can just move on. And
I
I'm
would
not-
say that makes
and
sense.
I don't-
I've
that works
got the
for me.
time on my calendar and I'm willing to come here and sit all day if that's what it takes to go through 7 presentations or 9 or however many we do. But if we know, there's consensus based on the scoring that some are just better than the others, is somebody really gonna snatch victory from the jaws of defeat on the strength of an interview? And so why drag everybody across the state to sit here and do that all day?
Yeah, I mean, if we're at a place we're comfortable with where we end up and, whatever we're comfortable with, that's, I agree, we don't necessarily have to force everyone to come here 100%.
Kelly texted you.
So, yeah, is there any, I guess we can go to the discussion part, is there any discussions about proposals that you liked, disliked, or, things that you wish you had more information on? I guess that's part of the question of getting presentations, is there, we have sufficient information in the proposals they provided to ultimately make that decision.
For my part, there are 3 firms that I saw as being more specialized and less, what I would say, NPO specific experience. And so if some of the other committee members scored them higher, you might want to just to hear their perspective on things and how they solve those. Good examples would be Michael Baker, Stantec, and Volkert. They all 3, in my opinion, didn't show as much, say, NPO and regional planning type experience, but they all had something that was interesting about them that might make them worth considering. And so if those are the kinds of firms you're interested in looking at, you might want to still have interviews.
I would agree. I would say of those, Stantec has a lot of local knowledge, and involvement in local development. And Michael Baker has some expertise related to resilience and flooding impacts on transportation that are somewhat unique, and might be something that where we would see ourselves focusing on those areas. And if that's the case, then that's a reason to go forward in consideration.
As far as, like, was it Stantec, yes, they do have a lot of local knowledge, private, public sector. I did have a concern with the fact that, and I don't know if I overlooked it or what, but there seemed to be some missing resumes from one particular firm that they had as a sub-consultant, and then they had someone that was added on here in the resumes that I did not see listed on the key personnel. So I don't know if anybody else caught that or not.
We had one that had an additional page at the end that we did catch as well,
Yeah.
but it was only in two of the packets, so.
Right, but as far as Stantec, yes, they have a lot of local knowledge. I did not have them in my top. But they have I think they have this team. They could do the work if that's something the MPO is looking for.
And we share a similar perspective, I think, to both what you said. I think we're looking at the cycle too in which we're moving out of. We're completing the LRTP and we're moving more into an implementation specific work phase. So the work that we've identified in DPWP going forward is going to be a lot of implementation and specialized. We've also, grown our budget for planning studies prior to, 2019 significantly. So there is a larger number of work, hence the increase in the number of firms, but the type of work is more specialized and, specified than ever before. It's not just, MPO core products.
Yes.
So.
A lot of
that
it
should be considered.
focus on implementation of an LRTP that was, largely contributed to by our current firms.
Sure.
And so any new firms would, be involved early enough to have an influence, but not to restart from scratch on our draft LRTP, which is moving forward rapidly.
Sure. Yeah, and same thing, I think Clark brings up a good point. We can certainly score and say, if there's, look at where the breaks are, right? If we're really, really close across the board, then maybe that lends itself to having presentations. If there's a significant, gap between, the top 5 and the rest, then maybe that isn't a necessary decision. So I think, it really comes down to, we can probably just get to scoring. And if there's discussion after that, we'll average everything out and discuss the scoring.
Should we talk about the specific firms? Generally,
Sure.
Kittleson. Highly technical, is their work with our MPO has always been on time, and I would say are, they've kind of been very essential. Benish has have played a key role as well. But some of the people aren't here, in locally like they were. They're not quite as close. So that's a consideration as far as the ability to meet organizational needs that might be considered. Gannett Fleming, also somewhat local. They do a lot of work in District 7. We coordinated with them on some of the modeling that went on, and they've got a very strong, deep team. Is it exactly what we need? That is an area that we could talk about further. Michael Baker, I talked about, the flooding and resilience relevancy. Is that an area that we're going to focus on? The White House group, pretty strong proposal, and a lot of experience related directly to MPOs, and in some areas where being nimble and innovative and the ability to react quickly with some very strong subs available for certain types of data, or having Cambridge on call. Strong proposal. And VHB, strong team. Haven't worked with them as much, and the same thing with Volkert and Kimley Horn. We have worked with Kimley Horn and have had most things be okay, good. Those are my thoughts. I'm kind of leaning to thinking that we might want to try a couple of new firms.
I guess we should add to that. I know you skipped over it, but I guess for the recording, that Kimley Horn, Benish, and Kittleson are our current consultants. Just wanted to put that one out there. Everybody probably already knows that, but just so it's on the record. It's a good point that a lot of the proposals bring in, very solid, subs that may benefit for what we are looking to do in the future, something to consider. I don't know if I cut you off.
No, I was just saying that Dave mentioned we're not required to maintain any existing, though we do, and historically have had at least preserve some of our existing team just due to consistency and experience and work product working with the NPO. So it's not necessarily the same thing. We're looking to grow our team as well. I think pretty worked when we were, operating at a maybe less than 50% of the existing budget. We're looking to grow to 4 or 5 for that reason. So really it comes down to what you feel best meets the needs of the NPO going forward based on our work products. Paul and Clark, you've both been involved, mostly with the work that we've done over the last several years. And then ultimately, what firms do you think, like I mentioned before, are going to be best for helping us implement, the long range plan that we're currently developing? So that's all I really got. I don't have many more comments on that. It's more just evaluating based off what was proposed.
You mentioned with the Benesh that some of their personnel are no longer local. I would say if that is a concern or consideration that you guys are wanting to factor in, there are some in those that provide those other things or more detailed, like the resiliency that they are not local to this area.
Understood. And, at the same time that, it relates to ability to meet organizational needs versus a local preference, which we're not allowed to have. And we would, I would say that some of the work that Benish has done for us is stuff that we want to continue on with. And, further development of our prioritization tool for projects is an area that they've been instrumental in.
That was certainly something that I thought about too, in terms of reviewing the proposals, was to what extent are some of these consulting groups really plugged into what's happening in the Sarasota Manatee area. And so certainly Benesh is involved with the NPO since, I don't remember the year, but it's been a long time, but also with Manatee County, Sarasota County, and both transit agencies. But then, somebody like Stantec, for example, is also plugged in locally who we don't have much experience with. So whether or not they're local, I think if there's work involved, I think that can come as an asset as well. To echo what Ryan said, I do also think about the value of maintaining 1 or 2 GPCs that can bring some of that institutional continuity and some of that background knowledge as well. And I'm also thinking about, what the NPO is interested in doing based on what we've heard in the last couple of years and with the LRTP. So active transportation, complete streets and transit, I know has been a big focus. Also ITS and TISBO doing traffic analysis and traffic data. There's been discussion about modeling and forecasting. And so that was a huge consideration when I was reviewing the proposals. If we're serious about bringing that in-house, we will need support on that. And then that transfers over to performance measures and prioritization. So safety being a major one, and then also, as Dave mentioned, resiliency. Then thinking about additional supports like public engagement and writing grant proposals. How can we better support our local agencies in writing grants as well? So those are sort of the main 6 points that I was reviewing when I reviewed the proposals. I have a short list of 5 or 6. We'll see how they shake out. But yeah, a lot of really good, strong proposals.
Good comments, Clark. Thank you.
In scoring them, I had Benish and Kittleson as 1 and 2. And part of it is because they've done good work for the NPO recently, so they've got not just good experience overall, they've got good relevant experience helping do the plans that sit underneath the LRTP primarily. And I think I need to say a lot more about that because we all know who they are. Kimley Horn was third along with White House. I thought White House was really interesting, that they've done some really cool stuff for Broward MPO. I'm a little bit concerned that I think all their key personnel are at least 6 hours away from us, so but if they had local presence, I think they'd be an interesting team to talk to. Similar with no, I was thinking of somebody else. So again, at Fleming was next. I think they don't have quite as much, say, MPO specific experience, but they've got a lot of good general experience, good overall experience, good team people there. Then I had BHB and Volker. Each I saw having some limitations, primarily in having MPO specific experience. And then finally, Michael Baker and Stantec, who I see as more specialized firms. So Michael Baker, it seems that Dave picked up on their resiliency work. They've also, it looks like they've worked with the central office on some transit planning and programming stuff that I thought was interesting. And so I think they have some strength there. Stantec is not just because they work in the area, they've got good planners and engineers, and I think they'd be good at those types of studies with, in general, I think their one study they cited that they've done for the MPO was the Barrier Island Transportation Study. If you've worked with them, you know that they've got ability to say general traffic engineering and transportation planning studies. It doesn't look like they've worked as much under, say, a LRTP umbrella and those types of larger regional plans. I think that covers it.
I've been reading over VHB. One of the things I liked about them is that they have worked closely with District 1. They're, I believe, the in-house consulting firm for for FDOT, District 1, and they have done some MPO work with Metro Plan Orlando. Just knowing that the company and Sarasota County has worked with them in the past in various aspects, and they've done good work for the county.
No, I have prior experience, not a lot of it, but I have prior experience working with PHB also. When I worked in SCAT, now Breeze, they seem to, in my experience with them, they seem to work pretty good. Granted, what the transit agencies does and what we do here are two different things, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, so I think whether you want to talk to a team like PHB, I think depends on how much you branch out of what I think of as normal MPO studies. I think PHB is a really good land use planning in general type firm, and good for local governments, the types of plans you work on there. And if you see yourself doing more of those kinds of things at the MPO level or assisting the local government, I think they'd be a good addition.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the goals that, historically, a lot of, as the MPO's grown, a lot of it used to be related directly to MPO core products, which, you need firms on hand to do those types of work, but also, as you mentioned, we've been, asked either through legislation or by specific request to give greater consideration to those types of things, like land use, like transit, not just our, like bike ped, not just our traditional, 5 MPO mandated work products. So, giving those things consideration is, we did have discussions, with several before, we were in the cone of silence and discussed a lot of the needs. They were able to reveal, our budget and some of our future planning. I think a lot of these are tailored to that, to try to meet additional future needs. So that's why I think some of them are.
I agree
like that. Yeah.
I think whatever it's called, because some of the categories may have some, changes in federal focus or law that would influence our considerations for what our LRTP encompasses and what projects are going to emphasize. But in our area, whatever we call it, resilience or emergency preparedness and being able to have recovery and have the MPO's plan support economic recovery from disasters of any kind, I think is not gonna go away. I think that's gonna be very important. And I think that the other area is being nimble and innovative and several talked about supporting work of the MPO as an extension of the MPO staff, which is kind of the way that we have worked with our consultants, and being able to have not just a consultant have their team, but being able to work with other consultants is kind of one of the things that we've done successfully. And so a team's effort or ability to fit into that type of relationship with other consultants and the MPO staff is important. And it's tough because they're all capable and competent, and some we have, more experience with than others, and some the experience, maybe we didn't see as much innovation or flexibility in implementing tasks as we would have liked. So that's not a criticism, but it does affect scoring potentially, and then it comes down to people's awareness of that, and we'll see. So I too was impressed with White House Group more than I expected to be, and Gannett Fleming certainly has some talents and skills. I do think, and I'd probably have to go back and revisit the proposals, but the corridor approach versus just a traffic study of a specific development is something that we have used in our LRTP and in our project prioritization process, where we take a systems approach and overlay multiple priorities, and then sort of see which ones help address multiple performance objectives. And that's what the prioritization tool has done. I think a pretty good job of helping sort through these competing priorities and end up with projects that can be transformative and make a difference for the region.
Right, and I think that goes towards the statements about BHB and some of the other firms' strengths, and looking at land use as well. I mean, I don't know if it's the best example or not, but the FDOT has the ongoing Cortez Vision and Action Plan, and they've got some land use recommendations in there. Neither the MPO nor FDOT is doing the land use planning for the city of Bradenton and Manatee County, but to get this road facility to work like you want, to achieve the vision, you need to make these changes to land uses. I think that's fair game. And so that more holistic approach, the fact that, you've got context-based planning principles threaded through the design manual, so you have to consider the adjacent land uses. So when you're going to consider the land uses when you design the road, why don't you consider the road when you design the land uses? And so they wrap around each other in that way. And without always saying the words, a lot of what's happened with context-based planning is related to safety. They'll talk about bicycle level of comfort or things like that, but often that boils down to real or perceived safety. In a corridor, over time, I think resiliency could be threaded through that same sort of holistic view of a road corridor. And so all of these things you've been saying about these firms and where some of their strengths lie, even if it's not with traditional core MPO products, I think has bearing. Is why I couldn't say right now, you absolutely shouldn't talk to any of these firms. They all bring something to the table.
Yes.
Some bring more than others, and some are more more MPO focused than the others or have more MPO experience than the others.
Yeah, this definitely wasn't easy. I mean, 9 consulting firms, all of them are fully capable of doing the work.
Yeah, I think that's.
It's just,
That's how we felt. I mean, I think historically we've had some that were, probably better off as subs that applied to be prime contractors. And this time around, I don't think that was really the case. I think there was, the 9 are all capable of doing the work. It's, I think sometimes we've had those conversations is where are we heading with this cycle specifically, right? These are 3-1-1 contracts. It's where are we in the cycle of what we're wrapping in, an LRTP. Maybe that's, obviously supporting the vision of that and carrying out the goals of the LRTP is what they're gonna be tasked to do, but it's not, maybe that of all their experience was tied up in doing LRTP development. Maybe that's not a huge need in the next contract cycle, which is, I think, some of the conversations we had about, Mark mentioned is how do we weave these other, we're running out of, it's not as feasible as it once was just to build roads and solve our transportation problems. We're having to be more thoughtful, across the board, whether it's through resiliency or land use and how we go about actually executing our plans. And not just saying, oh, well, maybe we just build more capacity and that'll solve all of our area's issues. That's what these teams have, I think, have done a good job of shaping how their skills and assets will be able to kind of help shape that. So I know I've got my scores. I know we're gonna add them all up together.
yeah, I'm struggling because that's what it's like, everybody's good.
Yeah,
Then you
no,
start having to pick apart, okay, this
which
to lower the score, or what makes the one stand out above the other.
Yeah.
They're all good. Yeah, I'm struggling on the.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to the other, the first 2 columns, I think they're all, building well in, like, I think they all have solid, experience and qualifications themselves, and then, have pretty solid previous project experience. I think that comes into the innovation side, and then obviously the current need of, can they meet the organization's needs at this time? I think that's where I saw my biggest differences in scoring.
That makes my life easier because I see things objectively. I don't have to deal with them on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's like,
I can add them all together if you,
oh,
well,
it's not, it's actually giving them a score on the various,
Yeah. Whenever you're good. Thanks, Mark.
yeah, I'm gonna be last, I'm not,
I'm taking
it's taking my
your
time.
chips.
No, it's just, yeah.
I guess I have this spreadsheet set up on my computer where I just got the numbers in. Let me get my
You
computer.
do that, it'll be faster. Yeah.
Set it up.
Again, the scores are gonna be so close that I think that maybe our
Yeah, we keep got us and just do it.
the verbal presentations, if we want, maybe we can.
I think it'll short itself. If we're, if there are too many that are all together a few points, then it might make sense. They're all,
They all have the same.
yeah, and we make that, it was life harder and we just add more.
What are we making my life?
Does. I know that's historically, we've talked to a number of jurisdictions, and I know you all in cities have far more than we do in terms of, contracts. I know some cities have, nearly double digits in terms of consulting contracts. We don't have a full department behind us for that, so it's the few of us.
Positive comments for VHB today based on personal experience, and
That's always helpful,
that is helpful.
Yeah, VHB's been a general planning consultant for Manatee County. I think they work primarily with their development services department, so traffic study review.
Now that made our lives easier sometimes when the projects cross from, like it involved MCAT and SCAT at the same time, having the consultants that both agencies use. That's always a plus, not that it really comes to this, but like, even recently, even here at the MPO, we ran into a situation with SCAT that their contract was running out and we had the contractor, so we took on the project for them. So, you know, those are things that we'll also consider as we move forward to selecting the firms that we decide to. How do they work currently with other local agencies? And what their experience is with those. I mean, judging by Paul's comments and your comments, Clark, seems that VHB has worked okay. Maybe not for what we currently use them for, or we would use them for, but for whatever it's worth, at least they seem to have a good working relationship with your guys' team. I'm starting talking these numbers.
So just to clarify, we've got the presentations booked for the whole day from 9 to 5, I think. So are we looking at a shorter meeting or are we going?
I think we won't need more than half a day.
That's set up just as a worst case scenario. We can discuss that once we figure this out and tweak it from
20-minute
there.
presentations, 10 minutes discussion. Half-hour piece. Okay. We've done this before. Is that viable?
Sounds brisk, but
And we've, see, our most recent one, I think we had 45 minutes
Mhm.
for the entire with the presentation and Q&A.
just used to doing them roughly 1 hour headways, just so it gets get one team after the other one in,
Yeah,
the discussion after and everything.
I think too, if we're expecting the scoring to be pretty close and that presentations to be convincing, I think Q&A and the discussion is where we might learn a great deal. So I can make sure that we maybe left some time for that too.
Stuff when you have good working relationships with so many of these people and it's kind of like, how do you sort that out as far as, who do you want to work with on this stuff? whose experience is most relevant to what we see ourselves being involved in. Which is what Nina was talking about.
Some of them make your life easier.
Good, that's important. That's the idea.
I don't think anyone will rely on this MPO alone to put food on the table, but with the plans you've got coming in the UPWP, do we have enough to keep 4 or 5 firms busy?
I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, we're historically operating, with the 3, at some points, we were only doing a couple $100,000 a year in planning work, and now it's ranging between $750 and $1 million a year.
And Frank,
Even once you get over the LRTP hump?
Yeah, so it's probably gonna slide back a little bit, right? I think some, we're doing congruent studies with the LRTP, so it's a bit higher right now. We've got, Ed Smith and Sarasota, and you've got our Bear Island study, we've got an investment analysis with the LRTP, so it's a bit higher right now. But once we get through, it'll probably level off around this 700.
And all your
and it's
satellite plans start to need refreshes at some point.
Yes.
in the last 4 years, there have been,
Yeah, they'll be maintaining, at least through the work program, it shows that we're continuing to receive that through allocation of DOT of about $1 million. We're using some of that now for capital stuff, but we're staying around at $700,000 to $750,000 a year. So.
and foresee that.
Yeah, foresee that going forward.
And we've had, in the last 4 years, there were a couple of times where we would have been a lot more comfortable having an additional consultant available because everyone was busy and the capacity, was pushed.
Yeah, be helpful.
Time deliveries, projects slipped in 1 or 2 circumstances, and
Can't remember who it was, and maybe it was more than one firm, but some talked about helping with the TIP development. Do you see that being something you might work assignments for, keeping in-house? It's
In-house mainly now, I mean, this was when we were, really, this was at one point we had 4 people on staff. I think we used same thing when we were in between, when Sue retired, we utilized them as, we had a rolling task for like PWP, the assistants. And those things when we were short on staff.
it'd be more for helping with our refining the prioritization process, working with the technical advisory committee, that and tracking project delivery. We know that there will probably be follow-up to our investment analysis that we want to continue to focus on and monitor certain areas that help make sure that projects that are prioritized and are funded actually make it through the delivery process, whether that's local agency delivery through the LAP program, which has had some challenges, or working with, FDOT and their contractors. And if it's off the state highway system, they are pushing more projects to the local agencies. In fact, they're pushing almost everything off the state highway system to local agencies, and some are better equipped to deliver projects, and others are, been stretched thin, so to speak, where we've seen challenges. Let's see.
It's still me. We're just gonna have to wait.
We're good. It's gonna take David well to have all of it.
It's gonna be, especially when I go in and number up that I should have.
Do it, there isn't one you have to do it all at one time. When you have to do it during a public meeting. You kind of just have to do it, that's what.
We put in our UPWP some more resilience analysis related to impacts of flooding and weather events on the transportation system? And is that something that you know, I mean, certainly both counties have had huge issues in the last year and a half, and going back to, you know, big storms back to Ian, where the resilience of the transportation system continues to be important. And it's, you know, certainly important for FDOT as well. Is that an area that the MPO can help support planning in? You know, we didn't put it in our list, but we've talked about it in the past as more of a regional evacuation study and some localized modeling that refines the district-wide model and takes a look at traffic flows and patterns and origin destination to influence project selection and prioritization.
Certainly from the evacuation perspective, and then also the flood-prone state portions of the state highway system, which often are also evacuation routes. The flooding and the need for evacuation feel like they're needed at the same time, but they're often not. You know, you evacuate before there's a problem typically, but it can impact recovery. You know, people want to return, and then you can have damaged infrastructure or stuff that's still flooded. You know, it takes, if the rain is inland, it takes a while for the coastal stuff to crust. And so at the same time, people are saying, well, the sun's out, why can't I go home? You're saying you can't go there because water's 2 feet over the road. And so I don't know, more look at some of that stuff. I'm not sure exactly how all of that plays into resilience and evacuation, but I know we're going to be trying to get more funds allocated to watershed studies, things like that. So get more of our stormwater regulations and studies to date. So I didn't really answer your question. I think there's room for it, but until we've got a clearer path locally, I'm not sure exactly what it would be. But yeah, at least the planning for the regional facilities, I think I copied Dave and Ryan, maybe Nina, on some emails I sent to the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, where we've got some major roads in North County that have been built that we think have value as evacuation routes, but we haven't gotten any traction. So just having the MPO's voice to help us work with TVRPC to get our evacuation route map. Right. It's not like we're trying to add every road in the county to it, but Wallow Road ties 41 interstate to 301, and it's going to be 4 lanes and probably built high enough that it'll be fairly
Right,
robust.
and does it get you
And so why would it
just to 301, or does it get you
further? And we're growing up there, and so why wouldn't that help? Or why wouldn't you add a road like that? There's some lesser roads in West County that I would say don't even need to be on the map yet, that will ignore big facilities like Swallow or Fort Hammer.
No, agreed, and you know, we do have a study kind of preliminary identified out in the next few years for doing exactly that, so understanding doing watershed analysis, of doing and understanding how the transportation system is going to be impacted. To your exact point is maybe some roads shouldn't be on the evacuation route because they're going to be underwater.
Right.
You know, that we need to look at that from the perspective of where evacuation routes really work. If they're trying to leave and they're already trying to get back and they're you know under 2 or 3 feet of water, that's not really helpful for evacuation. So we agree.
But if you're trying to evacuate Anna Maria Island, you're gonna use State Road 64 and Cortez for the most part. State Road 64 is, you know, the causeway, especially the east end over to 75th. That area is somewhat flood prone. People tend to evacuate before the surge comes or before all the rain.
checking our
comes.
math too?
Not even looking at it, I'm just dumping it here, that's why I'm dumping it all here.
Oh,
And it's
individual.
calculated,
policy.
it's calculated though.
Okay, that does check our math.
Yeah.
So makes sense.
So it's more about just the right regional planning for evacuation routes, because we don't need Mock Swallow Road to be on the MPO project priority list right now any more than it already is. I mean, it's there, it's a voice of support for some legislative request, or was in the past. It's more about just making it right. You know, if you're going to communicate to the public, this is our evacuation route. Now, and this major road that we've got 3,500 units subdivisions all, that's not one of the evacuation routes, that they might choose. I think people still choose the right road these
Yeah.
days, because they've got access to so many different mapping sources, but still it sends the wrong message, not to have a what seems to be a regionally important facility not included in the map like that.
Yep, no, that makes sense. You know, I think that's our role too. Said support in a lot of those things to say, you know, we have same thing, have a student for planning council and be able to say that, you know. It's different situations for, you know, Cornelis and even Hillsborough in some cases with how built how some of those are where, you know. Evacuation routes are set in Pinellas County, you know, they're not, you're not really building.
Right.
Vast new roads and systems and things like that, so for us, it's being current is certainly, you know, necessity, so. Yeah, and that's the hope, some of this work is gonna be, as you mentioned, you caught on with the proposals, is it's to help. Not only just do the things that we've historically done and, you know, NPOs are gonna be continued to, my assumption is we continue to ask to do more. More than less, right, in terms of just bringing across the board. And this will help prepare us to do that.
One more, please.
That's fine, I'm still plugging away. The longer you take, the easier it is for me.
And Dave's still adding.
So I got this kind of tweak.
Hey, you're gonna run out of,
Eraser.
eraser.
Well, this is, I'm with Paula, this is really difficult and
The emotions on the side.
They're not emotions, it's whether or not they've done good
Right,
work or not.
right. Well, and you know, who could help us the most and, you know, who's
See, otherwise, all my scores.
ability, you know,
I gotta
who can help us.
differentiate.
They're all solid proposals, that,
Admittedly, I didn't really look I looked at my numbers individually and then I looked at the other, I was like, oh, I guess that doesn't make sense.
that's what
Yeah,
I didn't add them up until I was done.
yeah.
Kind of why I also told you to just give me yours, because once I had yours in my hand, I couldn't change mine.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I guess I'm done.
See how these plug in.
Ooh, that was a close one. Just in the nick of time, because I literally just got done. Funny. It seems, everybody seems to
Yeah, they're.
be in agreement.
But yeah, I mean,
That's kind of what how I thought this would play out. I mean, everybody's kind of income, but I mean, it's
right,
they're local firms, so you know, 100-point scale, everybody's gonna end up what roughly say 75 or 80 to 100 range, and the
Yeah.
ones that tend to be 90s or higher are gonna get pulled way up. Into the 500s. This person can be
Yeah. You know, I mean, I think
in
that's.
the low 500s and high 400s.
Interesting around that, like 4 or 5, 6 mark is where I think it starts to. You know,
Gets blurry.
yeah.
Dave, I'm gonna need your help with that one. Is that a 15 or 18 or 10?
that's 18.
This one? Is that a 10, 18, a 15?
That's another,
Yeah, it's 18.
I believe so. What's it at? Let's see. 70. Yeah, I think so. These adds up to 77.
Yeah, that's really quick. Then that's when you know it's bad. Yeah,
Okay. And in a couple, we have a pretty good idea of, okay, well, I hope we end up with them. And then a couple, it's kind of like, I'm not as sure. Yeah, this is, it's a good problem to have, that we have such good consultants in Florida. Interesting that some subs get on lots of teams too, so.
Yeah,
And you know, it's interesting, we have not done a lot of specific, like speed studies for ourselves. FDOT has done whatever they do. But I saw Adams traffic on a bunch of different teams, and it's kind of like, gives you some ideas of, you know, some of that sub-regional modeling that we could be involved in. You know, some MPOs have their own traffic count stations that they've installed and owned and operated. You know, in years ago, down in Lee County, they had the developers put in permanent count stations that after a certain period of time, the county then took over and operated the count stations that supplemented the DOT count locations. Of course, now we have big data, which doesn't work the same way.
So we have an increasing number of microwave detection systems that are in this county, so don't install counters without checking with this first. We might have a count station there. But those are pretty good for speed studies. I think we could do reliable counts and some class and speed.
yeah, I was using pencil. when
Me
you did
too. Same here. I had to go get one, but
We've got some of that, but I could think speed studies becoming increasingly relevant. Context based on speed management is a big part of safety.
mhm.
So knowing your baseline stuff, you're gonna do any sort of before and after analysis, any improvements. And I don't know if you think of what the MPO doing that kind of stuff or not.
Not that much. We're usually at a more higher elevation, I think, as far as, you know, we're not looking at one corridor specifically as much when, I mean, I think we've had good communication with FDOT in the district, and they've done focus areas in some of the areas where safety's been a big issue, you know, specific corridors.
You say that, but you've also had people out just walking corridors for safety studies too, and it's pretty micro.
Yeah, that's true, and
I mean, if you ever did that,
and people like that, they want us to do more of that.
Right, so to do that, go out and find out where the people and bikes are, you might want to do a follow, you know, volume and speed.
Yes.
Just to see, because it'd be less expensive. Or you have people out there walking the corridor for half a day, and you'll get good data that will complement.
Correct. that's why even our development of our UPWP, the expertise of our technical advisory committee is so appreciated, important.
Any of my scores.
Not much.
You don't have to really add it at the end either. David will add it for you.
Well. But she
I have
wants
to see if
know.
I can do it.
That's part of
Do I need to
it.
adjust some scores?
Like, well, because you want your final to be consistent with your thought process that got to the scores, so.
Right.
And then when you see them in context, sometimes you go, well, they're not that good or they're not that bad in relation to others, so. You make adjustments and then you bring everything closer together, which makes it even harder.
It's like they scored high and then they scored low and said something else, and then it's like, wow, the scores came out closer than what I thought they would.
Right. I mean, I'd like to have a little bit more discussion if you're willing to on, any, and we did get some of this. Is there, a company that we don't have that you think would really help us? And that might influence our final decision as we, the scores are a tool. They're not the selection process per se. They're just documentation of the process. Or anybody, the one that brings anything that we're missing or that we could benefit from that stood out above and beyond.
Let's wait and see where the numbers are all.
I'm just gonna go with these, whatever it is, whatever it is.
It'd be funny to compare Paula to everybody else, watch her mimic exactly.
They're all the same, they're high.
Yeah, they are. We're fine. Like number in a piece of paper.
Then the presentations have the same scoring tool, or is it something different?
No, it's just the presentation. This is the only actual, numbers we go up with the presentation. We would just shortlist. If presentations do happen and we want to hear them, then we would just have a simple conversation at the end and shortlist from there. So,
And
Yeah,
that served us well in the past.
Yeah. No, the process has worked and,
And some of the thing that, as I was reading some of the proposals, they talked about some, things that we've worked on in the past as far as like EV and getting charging stations and all that, but in light of, what's going to happen under the current administration and pulling back on some of those things is like, what does that mean for NPOs and local governments?
Right.
It's.
It certainly will influence the federal funding, but we have local priorities, which may still focus on some areas and some of the federal criteria for, we've seen things written at the Washington DC level that talk about, consideration of birth rates in prioritization processes, and that isn't filtered down through the regulations yet, but I don't know what that would mean for us.
their ability to be adaptable though is certainly a characteristic they're gonna have as we deal with.
That's right.
New legislation.
And that's what we can look for in these presentations is that adaptability and that flexibility, that being able to, you have to kind of have a crystal ball and look into the fog. And you don't want to change, the regional priorities are set here. And
Just, is with the presentations, are we gonna ask them to have certain questions so that they all address, so what is it that we're looking for in the presentation?
Yeah, we do have a set, we do have a group of questions that we had last time that we've amended somewhat, if that's the direction you want to go, but we can also certainly provide if there is a overlying question that we'd like all of them to ask, or a set of questions that we, want them to be prepared for, we could certainly do that as well.
Yeah, because one of my questions would be is about, electric vehicles and, is possible, potential for the federal policy to change on that. How quickly are they, or how are they able to move away and be flexible to addressing the situation that EV was supposed to help with?
Yeah.
What other technologies, innovations would they recommend for us to use? And then the other one is in line with resiliency, and looking at our bi-county area and how can we improve upon that? I know we did our resiliency study, but I don't know. I believe it's either Stantec or Kimley Horn that has our fire truck that's underwater in their presentation. I think that's our fire truck. That was on Beta Vista
Yeah.
during one of our mini storms that we had this past season. I don't even know if the last, like, or an emergency, doing an emergency evacuation study. I don't know
Well,
when
right.
the last one was done for this area. I think,
Probably the statewide one 10 or 12 years ago.
yeah, and how relevant is that?
We have more roads, but we probably have bottlenecks that could appear quicker in some areas, so. Everyone's road is an evacuation route, everybody's road that they want to widen is an evacuation route, but then where does it get you to, where does it help you? The evacuation studies used to say, well, we're gonna get you out of our county, and then you'll be
Right.
someone else's problem. And then they took kind of a, getting people to shelter, and then sheltering in place became more important and recognized.
That's really a lot of it. So a lot of it's, shelter in place. It's when you know your zone, so you.
Right.
Yeah, right. A pretty good idea of how severe a storm can be. We don't know exactly where it's going to land, but
Right.
if you're prepared for the worst, you know that you're not in a safe place, you need to go.
And I think the MPO, much like we do in safety, we can play an important support role to the planning process for recovery and the resilience effort of how the transportation system handles and is maintained and operated through storm events, for example, is, can be very informative and helpful to our leaders or policymakers. And that's where the expertise of these consultants can really help us. And, it's not like there's unlimited resources to answer every question we could ever like to ask. So we have to kind of stay focused, and that's where the UPWP and the LRTP set the stage.
It doesn't seem like anything would change very quickly anyway, even if the federal government did change, and it's got to get from law to rules to the state. And so,
I think
so.
what'll change is we have to somehow focus on fewer priorities realistically.
But that's more an outcome of relatively flat versus increasing prices, not anything having to do with federal policy or.
No, that has to do with our implementation.
Well, the question I would have is, what are the other funding sources, considering gas taxes are not what they should be, we have more fuel efficient vehicles. Is it, what do they
Continues to be
recommend for us
factor,
to, as funding for these infrastructure projects, because that's one of the things that constantly is like, what are you gonna do?
Well, yeah, there's been all those statewide national discussions on, user-based fees, and there's obviously no real traction because that constitutes, most people's minds an additional tax, right? So, right, how do you address it? I mean, gas tax hasn't been touched in 30 years.
Right.
Probably not gonna be increased at the federal level anytime soon. So exactly, how do you overcome, even with EVs I think not rolling out at the expectation that they are, normal vehicles, right, hybrid vehicles, I think it was just last
That's the
15
thing,
years,
is-
the average fuel economy now is, double what it
Right,
used to be 20 years ago,
so
so.
we're not getting the revenues from the
Sure.
conventional vehicles, we're not getting the revenues from the hybrids or the EVs.
That's the same rate, so.
And that's, you've got some indexing of federal and state fuel taxes, but it's not on par with what you see. in
Right.
Not
inflation.
even
So
covered
it-
cost, yeah.
Right, and so at the same time, we seem to be willing to buy gasoline at whatever price it's out there, and it can swing by, 15, 20 cents a day,
A
from the
day.
time you drive to work to the time you go home, so another nickel of federal, state and local tax, 15 more cents a gallon, if most Americans wouldn't even know it happened.
No.
It would do so much for.
So there's only like a very top end peak where, they actually notice,
When it
people's
hits, when
decline.
it says $4.
Yeah, if you start getting $4 or $5, people start driving less, right?
Right,
In the mix of $3, people aren't, it's in that rate, people aren't gonna really, you have to drive, right, in this area,
yeah,
so.
but there's also like, there's apps, like the 7-Eleven app. Some days they'll give me like an extra bonus of 11 cents off in addition to the 5 cents that I get just by doing the
Using
app.
their app.
Yeah, and or, Shell has like, it's like 3 cents off and it lets you buy gas so many times, then it goes up to like 10 cents off or something like that. So, I mean, people are using different things and stuff to lower their prices, which goes to show me that they didn't really need to price the gas that high in the first place. Cause if they're giving me an extra 16 cents off some days or extra, but 5 cents every day.
Oh, yeah, people spend $5 to drive across town to save $3.
Right.
They don't figure it out.
There's Gas Buddy that tells you where the prices of all the gas stations in the area.
Because you have to drive a lot, driving habits have changed so much that you fill up a small tank once every week and a half anyway, so $30 versus 35 or whatever it is,
Right.
That's a really small tank.
it's 10 gallons, so.
Mine's 17.
I have a 17.9, and that seems really small.
I used to put 12,000 miles a year on a car, and now it's more like 6.
Mine is
I got a
30.
5-year-old car that just
Yours
did
is
30,000.
Ours are both 30, trucks are not ideal.
No,
Yeah, no, it's an SUV, but
Yes.
yeah,
It's got a
I've got
17
some
gallon.
big drinks. Yeah.
If you decided to go crazy, it was $160.
Yeah.
At that point, it didn't seem like a good idea.
I remember back in 2011, it was over 4,
Yeah,
so,
Yeah,
it's
that's.
not a rare, that's what in 2010, $11,
There used we're advocacy groups that were, arguing that we needed to raise our gas prices so people would drive less. That's not the MPO.
You ready with you guys?
Okay, go, let's,
So you want me to list them out 1 through 9? How do we wanna do this?
In order.
In order as far as ordering.
Okay,
Just read the order and the number and then go to,
okay, so first, number 1, Hiddleston, 573. Number 2, Ganesh, 551. Number 3, BHB, 532. Number 4, tell me if I'm going too fast.
Good.
Then good.
Number 4, White House Group, 516. Number 5, Gannon Fleming, 507. Number 6, Michael Baker, 501. Seven is Kimley Horn, 496. 8, Dantech, 494. Last, number 9, Volker, 473.
well, Well, that's helpful.
Yeah, also.
As far as we've, any orders there is there
They're all
a split?
fairly high scores still.
Yeah, they're all high scores.
The first three were in the top three, so.
Right, I'm good with, I'm,
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us on the same.
There was a lot of similarities between everybody in the way they were scoring, so going back to your initial comment, Clark, there seems to be some sort of agreement on a few of them.
right. Mhm. What was this difference between Michael Baker and Kimley Warren?
Michael Baker and Kimley Horn, the difference was, so Michael
5 points.
was 5 points.
496.
5 points.
496
The
versus.
difference between Kimley Horn and Stan Tech was 2 points.
Wow. So where do you draw the line on presentations?
That was gonna be my next question. We all need to come to an agreement on that. This is a two-way conversation here.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I would love it if we could limit it to 6, but on the other hand, I don't know that that's
4, 5.
what we wanna do.
So at 6, it would cut it at Michael Baker.
Everybody who's 500 and above.
They're all,
500 and above, that would be, instead of 6, it would be 5. It would cut it out again.
I thought Michael Baker was
I
501.
thought Michael Baker was
Yes.
501.
Oh, true, so it does, there's no change, there's still
Yeah.
6,
that would be above 5.
sorry.
I think 6 is a comfortable number. I think it gives us a little bit of wiggle room with deciding when to final 4.
Mhm.
Is that what we're shooting for, right? Yeah. And if we have the time in the day, that would be my vote.
I support that too.
I mean, yeah, I think that's fair number to be able to actually hear presentations from. And then same thing, I think, we're gonna have the discussion of, we can do it now or we do it at the next one of exactly how many we do want to select, whether it's 4 or 5, depending on, good comment by Clark, and historically, I would argue 5 would have been too many for the amount of work we have. I think that's not maybe the case now. We've got, we had 3 at one point when we were doing like, $100,000 or so dollars a year. Now we're, at 6x that. So, I think it's, I agree, but I've told all of them that every conversation we've had prior was, we don't bring people on just to have them on as consultants and then not plan on using them for work.
It's been a long time before we had consultants that didn't actually get some work.
Yes, yeah, and that's not how we've typically operated, so we'd have to be very, I think, considerate of the number we do ultimately select, so that we're not, just putting contracts out there to have them, so. I don't think that needs to be decided right now, but it can be done, if we give some thought and consideration prior to the meeting on the 17th.
So you think you'll be selecting?
Initially, we're going at 4. If there's a real desire to go beyond that, then it can be discussed.
So presentations, while we mold out one over, do we do the presentations in the same order as they were, 1 goes first, 2, or do we let?
I would say if you want to order presentations, do them alphabetically.
Okay. That sounds like a
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah, I think that if there was a great desire to somebody really wanted to push for, moving forward with what do we have? We have 6.
Six, we're talking about.
And we're talking about 4 or 5, so I think that the schedule, the plan we have is probably a good one.
So if we go alphabetically, it would be, Ganesh would be first, Janet Fleming would be second, Kittleson would be third, Michael Baker would be 4th, VHB would be 5th, and White House would be 6th. I still know that alphabet.
Did well.
There you go.
Mhm.
So. If we're comfortable with that, we can certainly close it on that essence and say, we'll reach out to those that were selected and inform them of the placement. Said as a public meeting, all the scoring will be available to anyone would like to request it, those are all done here today, so. Yeah, at that point, you'll be able to, I think it'll help narrow us down a little bit. I think there was a decent break at the 6, down to the next 3, so. That being said, we'll hear out presentations and then ultimately decide what we want to go forward with. Final presentation stuff.
And the difference between 1 and 9 was exactly 100 points. So,
Huge.
Good.
anything else? Any discussions? Are you good of the order?
Sounds good.
Good, everybody good?
Good, yeah, thanks, everybody. Well,
I guess one question.
So you said we're good.
yeah, and, oh,
Backtrack a little
and you're gonna send out the tentative questions and
Yes.
see if we
yes.
wanna
We'll get all that done, and I'll
provide those out.
I'll send them to you first, so you can review them
Yes.
if you wanna add anything to it.
Questions?
Yeah, and then the discussions wouldn't be limited to those questions, but those we could identify some that we would like everybody to be prepared to respond to and share those in advance.
Now, presentations, how long do we wanna make them? We know we were gonna do 6. At 30 minutes, if one ends and one starts exactly on the dot, that's.
No, you
20.
need to,
20 minutes.
Alright.
The way I think of it is that we're not gonna learn much more from the presentations than we saw in the proposals, maybe a little bit more nuanced, but I think the.
More Q&A.
Discussion is, yeah.
Right.
it's
And I think we do that.
The
We
interaction.
give ourselves 20 minutes for each, and then you've got some time at the end for us to discuss, so we're not
so you're
dragging
saying
on.
20 minutes for their presentation and then,
We'll have to have a discussion, obviously, at the end, we're
Okay.
gonna do another short list, if you put it at 30, it's too long, it takes too much.
Good, so
time.
you're saying 20 minutes, including discussion with their team?
Sure, yeah, I mean, I don't think they need to provide, I think Danita's point, that we don't need to hear a 20-minute presentation of what's. in-
Burns capabilities.
Correct, I think it's 20 minutes overall of the discussion with them, they can cover high level what was in the proposal, and then we discuss back and forth.
Then we have an extra,
So we-
like 10
so-
minutes for us to discuss afterward and
Yeah,
set
I
up the
mean,
new one.
what's- the in between, like, so you have 20 minutes and then. Are you wanting like time after to
Yes,
discuss?
yeah, I think you.
And then the next one?
Yeah.
So
Are we
about
gonna-
40 minutes apart.
So this is the question, are we gonna discuss at the end of every meeting, or do we wanna discuss at the end of all the meetings? So we all,
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question.
Both, maybe.
You don't do in between and at the end? Yeah.
That's my question.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if that's an easy way, if we wanna summarize our thoughts on one and then have the next and then have it, have a final discussion at the end.
Kind of a very
At the end, we're gonna have to have a
discussion after each one.
you're gonna have to then ultimately put them on the same thing on a piece of paper and say, what are your 1 through 6 rank again?
and that time, I'm just asking because that time of discussion between meetings helps whoever, if they're not here,
Well, they should be.
well, no, but they could be while they, get up and
Well, they can change over presentation.
they change over presentations and stuff like that. We can have that discussion however long that is, if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah, but you don't wanna have discussion while they're doing their takedown and all. Or-
Right.
Yeah, to me, last time we did it all at the end.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that we had them bring in PowerPoints
I
or
thought something
anything
was
last
happening.
time.
It was optional, if they wanted to.
Let me know.
No, yeah, no, it's fine.
It's still good, so
Okay.
we can certainly finalize it, if there's desire to talk between, we can do that and just build it into the schedule. If it's, us talk for 5 minutes and then stop when the next come in and then they upload and start. We put 10 minutes in between, we can certainly build the schedule like that. And then have, 20 minutes at the end for us to do a final discussion.
Starting at 9 AM.
Yeah, but we had it at 9, so. We'll,
I think how we do it at the county, and I think we stop and then, at the end, because that part's not open.
Yeah,
yes, correct, it closes essentially for us to then talk about.
so if we do a 20-minute meeting, presentation, each one is 2 hours.
Yes.
Then you factor in
2.5 basically.
5 to 10 minutes between each
3
one.
hours, I would say like 9, 12 would be.
Yeah.
That's what we had tentatively on the list, but
That's
we
reasonable.
can work.
Okay.
we can work with that. Sure.
Okay.
All right,
And then it'd be 9 to 12. The 17th, I believe it is.
Yes. Right now.
17th. Yes, that Monday.
And we'll get out the questions, we'll get the questions out to you guys immediately.
Today, the Tuesday, this.
It's 2 weeks now, yeah.
Every Monday.
Monday for the next 4 weeks.
Belongs to the MP.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
It's been a rough couple of weeks.
Good. Thank you very much.
Easy done.
Yeah, so I guess we'll formally adjourn this.
Thank you. Everything is done?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
They say thank you along as well, I do the same thing. So thanks, Dave.